The planet was burning when they arrived. Lieutenant Yuna stood at the viewport of the UESC Horizon's Edge and watched the smoke rise from Veth-4. The colony below had been home to 3,000 souls just 1 week ago. Now there was nothing but ash and silence. "Dominion raid," said Sergeant Taiho, standing beside her. His voice was flat, emotionless. He has seen too many dead worlds to feel anything anymore. Scorched earth tactics. They didn't want prisoners. Yuna closed her eyes. She was a medic. Her job was to save lives. But there were no lives left to save on Veth-4. The Dominion had made sure of that. "We should still go down," she said quietly. Someone might have survived. Taiho looked at her with tired eyes. "No one survives a Dominion purge, Lieutenant. You know that." But Yuna was already walking toward the shuttle bay. The surface of Veth-4 smelled like death. Yuna pulled her mask tighter and stepped through the ruins of what had once been a market square. Buildings had collapsed into piles of broken stone. The ground was black with soot. Nothing moved. Taiho walked behind her, his rifle ready. 4 other soldiers followed them in silence. They all knew this mission was pointless. They were looking for survivors in a graveyard. "Wait," Yuna said suddenly. She stopped walking and tilted her head. "Do you hear that?" Taiho listened. At first, there was nothing. Then, very faintly, he heard it too. A sound coming from beneath the ground. A soft, high-pitched cry. "Under here," Yuna said. She dropped to her knees and began pulling away rubble from what looked like a collapsed doorway. "Help me." The soldiers hesitated. Taiho did not. He knelt beside her and started digging dot. It took them 20 minutes to clear the entrance. Behind the rubble was a metal door, sealed tight. Taiho placed a charge on the lock and stepped back. The door blew open with a sharp bang. Dot inside was darkness. Yuna turned on her light and stepped through. The room was small, maybe 5 meters across. The walls were scorched but intact. And huddled in the corner, pressed together in a pile of fur and claws and golden eyes, were 7 children, but they were not human children. They were Velhari. Yuna's breath caught in her throat. The Velhari were apex predators. They stood 3 meters tall when fully grown. They had claws that could tear through steel and teeth designed to crush bone. 12 star systems feared them. Humanity had avoided contact with the Velhari Confederacy for decades, but these were not warriors. These were cubs. The largest one could not have been more than 10 years old in human terms. She stood in front of the others, her small claws extended, her golden eyes wide with fear. She hissed at Yuna, a warning sound. Behind her, the smaller cubs whimpered. The smallest one, barely old enough to walk, was crying softly. "Easy," Yuna whispered. She lowered herself to the ground, making herself small. "Easy. I'm not going to hurt you." The largest cub did not move. Her eyes tracked Yuna's every movement. Taiho appeared in the doorway. When he saw the cubs, his hand moved to his rifle. "Don't," Yuna said sharply. "They're children." "They're Velhari," Taiho replied. "They're children," Yuna repeated. Her voice left no room for argument. Taiho's hand fell away from his weapon. He watched as Yuna slowly, carefully, reached into her pack and pulled out a ration bar. She broke it in half and held it out toward the cub's Dot. The largest cub sniffed the air. Her nose twitched. Slowly, very slowly, she reached out and took the food. She did not eat it. Instead, she turned and gave it to the smallest cub, the one who was crying. Yuna felt her heart break. "They're starving," she said. "How long have they been down here?" "At least a week," Taiho replied. "Since the raid." Yuna looked at the cubs. 7 children, alone in the dark, waiting for help that never came. Their parents were probably dead. Their people were light years away. And now a human was offering them food. The smallest cub finished the ration bar. It looked up at Yuna with huge golden eyes. Then, before anyone could react, it crawled forward and grabbed their hand. Its tiny claws pricked her skin, but Yuna did not pull away. The cub held on to her like she was the only solid thing in the universe. "We have to help them," Yuna said. "Command won't allow it," Taiho replied. "The Volhari and humanity have no alliance. Taking these cubs could be seen as kidnapping. It could start a war. Leaving them here will kill them. That's not our problem." Yuna looked at him. Her eyes were hard. "It is now." She reached into her pack and pulled out her medical kit. The largest cub watched her carefully as she approached. Yuna moved slowly, showing her hands, showing she meant no harm. "I'm going to help your brother," she said softly. "His leg is hurt. I can fix it." The largest cub did not understand the words, but she understood the tone. After a long moment, she stepped aside. Yuna knelt beside an injured cub and began treating its wound. One by one, the other cubs crept closer. They watched her work with curious eyes. Taiho stood in the doorway, watching. He should call this in. He should report the situation and wait for orders. That was protocol. Instead, he stepped inside the room and closed the door behind him. He locked it from the inside. "What are you doing?" Yuna asked. "Giving you time," Taiho replied. He sat down against the wall, his rifle across his knees. "Work fast." Outside, the planet continued to burn. But inside that small room, something new was beginning. Something that would change two civilizations forever. The smallest cub had fallen asleep against Yuna's chest. It was purring softly, its tiny claws still wrapped around her finger. Yuna held it close and made a silent promise. She would not let these children die. No matter what it cost her dad, she did not know it yet, but that promise would reshape the galaxy. Getting the cubs onto the ship was the easy part. Keeping them hidden was harder. Yuna had wrapped the smallest ones in thermal blankets and carried them aboard in supply crates. Taiho had distracted the deck officer with questions about fuel reports. By the time anyone thought to check the cargo, the cubs were already hidden in a storage room near the medical bay. "This is insane," Taiho said, watching Yuna arrange bedding for the 7 young Velhari. "When Captain Jisoo finds out, she have us both thrown in the brig. Then, we make sure she doesn't find out," Yuna replied. The largest cub, the one Yuna had started calling Bora, sat in the corner with her arms around her siblings. She had not stopped watching the humans since they came aboard. Her golden eyes followed every movement, every gesture that she did not trust them. Yuna could see that clearly, but she also had no choice. Her siblings were hungry and scared, and these strange soft creatures were the only ones offering help. Dr. Minho found out on the second day. He walked into his medical bay to find Yuna feeding a small Velhari cub with a bottle of nutrient paste. The cub was making happy chirping sounds. Its tail wagged back and forth. Minho dropped his datapad. "What?" he said slowly. "Is that?" "His name is Duri," Yuna replied calmly. "He likes the paste with extra protein. That's a Velhari." "Yes, there's a Velhari on my ship. There are 7, actually." Minho stared at her. Then he walked to his desk, sat down heavily, and put his head in his hands. "Yuna, do you understand what you've done? I saved 7 children from starving to death. You've created an interstellar incident." Yuna set down the bottle and looked at him. "Would you have left them there, Minho? Would you have walked away and let them die?" The doctor was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed and stood up. "Show me the others. I need to check their health." Yuna smiled. Over the next few days, Minho became fascinated with the cubs. He studied their biology, their diet, their behavior. He learned that Velhari cubs needed more iron than human children. He discovered that they purred when they were happy and growled softly when they dreamed. The crew began to notice strange things. Food went missing from the galley. Blankets disappeared from storage. Strange sounds came from the lower decks at night, but no one reported it. Somehow, word had spread. The ship had stowaways, and the stowaways were children. Human instinct took over. The crew protected them without being asked. Ensign Hana started leaving extra rations outside the storage room door. A technician named Junho quietly rerouted the heating system to keep the room warm. Even the gruff old chief engineer, a man named Sangho, pretended not to notice when his spare parts went missing to build the cubs, a small play structure. Bora noticed everything. She watched these humans, these strange creatures without claws or fangs, go out of their way to help cubs that were not their own. She did not understand it. Among the Velhari, strength meant survival. The weak were left behind. It was the natural order, that these humans kept breaking that order. One night, Yuna sat with the cubs while they slept. Bora was the only one still awake. She crept over to where Yuna sat and studied her face. Why? Bora asked. Her universal was broken, learned from translation programs and overheard conversations. Why you help? Yuna looked at her. Because you needed help. We are hunters, Bora said. Your people fear us. We are not same. No, Yuna agreed. We're not the same. But that doesn't matter. Why not matter? Yuna thought about how to explain it. Finally, she said, where I come from, we have a saying. Cubs are cubs. It doesn't matter what species they are. It doesn't matter what they'll grow up to be. When a child is hungry, you feed them. When a child is scared, you comfort them. That's just what you do. Bora was silent for a long time. Then she said, Velhari do not think this way. Maybe not, but maybe that can change. Bora looked at her sleeping siblings. The smallest one, Duri, was curled up against a human blanket, purring softly. Maybe, she whispered. Captain Jisoo discovered the truth on the fifth day. She walked into the storage room, expecting to find stolen supplies. Instead, she found 7 Velhari cubs playing with a ball of string while Taiho sat in the corner, pretending to be annoyed, but clearly watching them with soft eyes. Jisoo stood in the doorway. Her face revealed nothing. Someone, she said quietly, needs to explain this to me, now. Yuna stepped forward and told her everything. The burned planet, the hidden shelter, the children waiting alone in the dark. Her voice did not waver. When she finished, Jisoo was silent. She looked at the cubs. One of them, a small female with a torn ear, was drawing on a datapad she had stolen from somewhere. The drawing showed a human figure with large wings, surrounded by small Velhari shapes. What is that? Jisoo asked. That's Yuna, Taiho said. She's been drawing her for days. I think she sees her as some kind of guardian spirit. Jisoo picked up the datapad. She stared at the drawing for a long time. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes grew wet. Then she handed the datapad back and straightened her uniform. I never saw this room, she said. I never had this conversation. And if anyone asks, I have no idea why our food supplies are running low. She turned to leave, then paused. Keep them safe, Yuna. We'll figure out the rest later. She walked out without looking back. Bora watched her go. Then she looked at Yuna. Your leader, she said. She could punish you, report you, but she chose not to. Yes, Yuna replied. Why? Yuna smiled and put her hand on Bora's shoulder. The young Velhari did not flinch away. Because sometimes, Yuna said, doing the right thing matters more than following the rules. Bora thought about this. Among her people, rules were absolute. Disobedience meant exile or death. But these humans seemed to live by a different code. A code that put compassion above order. It was strange. It was confusing, but watching her siblings sleep peacefully for the first time since their parents died. Bora thought it might also be beautiful. Outside, the stars wheeled past as the horizon's edge continued its journey. Inside, 7 Velhari cubs dreamed of a future they had never imagined. A future where predators and prey could become something else entirely. The galaxy was about to change. It just didn't know it yet. The Velhari war fleet arrived without warning. One moment, the space around Kepler Station was empty. The next, 12 massive ships dropped out of hyperspace, their weapons already powered. Each ship was 3 times the size of anything humanity had built. Their hulls were dark as night, covered in the scars of 100 battles. Admiral Dongwu stood on the bridge of his flagship and felt his blood run cold. "All ships, defensive positions," he ordered. His voice was calm, but his hands were shaking. "Do not fire unless fired upon." On the lead Velhari ship, Warchief Renok watched the human vessel scramble into formation. He was old, even by Velhari standards. His fur had gone gray at the edges. His body was covered in scars from wars that had ended before most humans were born. "Pathetic," he growled. "Their ships are made of paper." "We are not here to fight," said Elder Theska. She stood beside him, her ancient eyes watching the view screen. "We are here for the children. We are here because humans took what belongs to us," Renok replied. "If they have harmed even one cub, I will burn their worlds to ash." Theska said nothing. She had lost her own children to war many years ago. She understood Renok's anger, but she also knew that anger made warriors blind. The horizon's edge docked at Kepler Station 2 hours later. Captain Jisoo received orders immediately. "Report to the negotiation chamber. Bring the Velhari cubs. No weapons. No guards. It's a trap," Taiho said. "They'll take the cubs and kill us as punishment." "Maybe," Jisoo replied. "But we don't have a choice. If we refuse, they'll destroy the station and everyone on it." Yuna knelt beside Bora and the other cubs. They had been told what was happening. Their people had come for them. They were going home, but something was wrong. The cubs were not happy. They huddled together, clinging to each other and to the humans who had cared for them. "You will come with us?" Bora asked Yuna. Her voice was small, frightened. "To meeting?" "Yes," Yuna said. "I'll be right beside you. Promise?" Yuna took the young Velhari's hand in hers. "I promise." The negotiation chamber was cold and gray. Admiral Dongwu stood on one side with his officers. On the other side, Warchief Renok waited with a squad of Velhari warriors, each one massive and terrifying. Elder Theska sat at the center table, her eyes closed, her breathing slow. The door opened. Captain Jisoo walked in first. Behind her came Yuna and Taiho, and behind them came the 7 cubs, walking in a tight group, their golden eyes wide with fear. Renok's gaze fixed on them immediately. His expression changed. For a moment, the old warrior looked almost vulnerable. "The children of Veth," he said quietly. "They live. They live," Jisoo confirmed. "My crew found them in a shelter beneath the ruins. They were alone, starving, and injured. We brought them aboard and cared for them. Why?" Renok demanded. "Humans in Velhari have no alliance. No treaty. Your people fear us. You call us monsters." "Some do," Jisoo admitted. "But my crew saw children in danger." That was enough. Renok studied her face, looking for lies. He found none. He turned to the cubs. "Come," he said, his voice gentler than before. "Your people are here. You are safe now." The cubs did not move. Renok frowned. "Did you not hear me? Come here, now. Still, The cubs stayed frozen. The smallest one, Duri, actually moved backward, pressing himself against Taiho's leg. Taiho looked down, surprised, then carefully placed his hand on the cub's head. Bora stepped forward. She walked until she stood between her siblings and the war chief. Her small body was trembling, but her voice was steady. "They saved us," she said. "These humans. They found us in the dark. They gave us food when we were hungry. They gave us warmth when we were cold. They held us when we cried." She paused, and her voice grew harder. "Where were you?" Rennek stared at her. No one had spoken to him like that in 50 years. "We did not know," he said finally. "The Dominion hid their attack. By the time we learned of Vethfor, we thought everyone was dead." "We almost were," Bora replied. "But the humans came. They came when no one else did." Silence filled the chamber. Elder Theska opened her eyes and looked at the humans for the first time. She studied Yuna, who stood with her hand still wrapped around Bora's. She studied Taiho, who was now holding Dory in his arms. She studied Captain Jisoo, whose face showed no fear despite being surrounded by warriors who could tear her apart. Slowly, Theska rose from her chair. She was small for a Velhari, bent with age, but when she moved, everyone watched. She walked to where Yuna stood. "You are the one who found them," she said. It was not a question. "Yes," Yuna replied. "You could have left them. Your people and mine are not friends. Saving those cubs put you at great risk. Why did you do it?" Yuna met the elder's eyes without flinching. "Because they were children. Because they were scared and alone. Because I could help, and so I did." "You expected nothing in return?" "I expected them to survive. That was enough." Theska was quiet for a long moment. Then slowly she reached out and placed her ancient hand on Yuna's shoulder. "Among my people," she said, "there is a word. Kureth. It means one who guards the young. One who puts the safety of cubs above all else." She paused. "It is the highest honor a Volhari can give. For 300 years, no outsider has been called Kureth." Her grip tightened slightly. "Until now." A murmur ran through the Velhari warriors. Even Rennek looked shocked. "Your people could have used those children as hostages," Theska continued. "You could have demanded payment for their return. Instead, you gave them love. You gave them safety. You gave them hope." She turned to address the entire room. "The Velhari do not forget such things. We do not ignore such debts." She looked at Admiral Dongwu. "Human," she said. "Your species has always been strange to us. Soft, weak. We did not understand why you survived when so many stronger races fell." She glanced back at Yuna, at Taiho, at the cubs who refused to leave their human protectors. "Now I begin to understand." She returned to her seat and folded her hands. "There will be no war today," she announced. "Instead, there will be discussion. The Velhari Confederacy wishes to know more about these humans who guard children not their own." Her ancient eyes gleamed. "Perhaps it is time our peoples learn from each other." Bora looked up at Yuna, her golden eyes bright with tears she refused to shed. "You kept your promise," she whispered. Yuna squeezed her hand. "Always." Behind them, Duri had fallen asleep in Taiho's arms. The sergeant looked deeply uncomfortable and utterly unwilling to let go. Rennek watched the scene with unreadable eyes. Something had shifted in him. Something old and hard was beginning to crack. The galaxy held its breath. Two species, separated by fear and distrust for generations, stood at a crossroads. And at the center of it all were 7 young cubs and the humans who had refused to abandon them. The future was uncertain. But for the first time in centuries, it was also full of hope. The Dominion struck at dawn. There was no warning. One moment, the space around Kepler Station was calm. Human and Velhari ships floated side by side, their crews still working through the details of a fragile new piece. The next moment, hyperspace tore open and death poured through. 40 Dominion warships. Their commander, a creature called Vex, watched from his bridge with cold satisfaction. His intelligence had been correct. The humans and Velhari were meeting, their defenses down, their attention elsewhere. "Perfect," Vex said. 2 enemies. 1 strike. Begin the attack. The first missiles hit Kepler Station before anyone could react. Explosions ripped through the outer ring. Alarms screamed across every ship in the system. On the bridge of the horizon's edge, Captain Jisoo grabbed her command chair as the ship shook from a near miss. "All hands to battle stations," she shouted. "Taiho, where are the cubs?" "Medical bay," Taiho replied through the communicator. "Yuna is with them. Keep them safe." "That's an order." The battle was chaos. Human ships were fast but fragile. Velhari cruisers were powerful but slow. The Dominion had numbers on their side, and Vex knew how to use them. Admiral Dongwu watched 3 of his destroyers vanish in balls of fire. His fleet was being torn apart. "This is Admiral Dongwu to all vessels," he broadcast. "Fighting retreat. Protect the station. We cannot let them take Kepler." But even as he spoke, he knew the truth. They were losing. On the Velhari flagship, Warchief Rennock stood at the command platform and watched his warriors die. His ships were taking heavy damage. For every Dominion vessel they destroyed, 2 more took its place. Warchief, his second-in-command, reported. "The human ship Horizon's Edge has taken critical damage. Hull breach in multiple sections. They are losing atmosphere." Rennock's eyes narrowed. "Where?" "Sections 12 through 14. The medical bay. The cubs." The Velhari children were on that ship, in that section. For a single heartbeat, Rennock hesitated. His duty was to the fleet. His responsibility was to the Confederacy. Those cubs were important, yes, but they were not worth risking his flagship. Then he remembered Bora's words. "Where were you?" "Helm," he growled. "Move us between the horizon's edge and the enemy fleet." His crew stared at him. "Warchief? You heard me. Put this ship in their path. Take the fire meant for the humans." "Sir, that will expose us to do it." The Velhari flagship turned. Its massive bulk slid through space, positioning itself as a shield between the damaged human vessel and the Dominion attack. The first volley hit Rennock's ship like a hammer. The bridge shook. Consoles exploded. Warriors were thrown from their feet. But the horizon's edge was spared. On the human ship, Taiho saw what happened. He saw the Velhari flagship move into position, saw it take hit after hit while the horizon's edge was protected behind it. "They're shielding us," he whispered. "The Velhari are shielding us." But there was no time to think about it. The medical bay was compromised. Emergency doors had sealed, but a new hull breach was forming. Atmosphere was venting. The cubs would die in minutes. Taiho ran. He reached the medical bay to find Yuna holding Bora and 2 other cubs near the inner door. The remaining 4 were trapped on the other side of the room, behind a collapsed support beam. The hull groaned. A crack was spreading across the outer wall. "Get them out!" Yuna shouted. Taiho didn't hesitate. He dove across the room, grabbed the nearest cub, and pushed it toward Yuna. He reached for the second one. The third. The fourth was Dory, the smallest, trapped under a piece of debris. The crack in the hull widened. Cold space waited on the other side. Taiho lifted the debris off Dory and grabbed a small cub with one arm. He turned to run. The hull gave way. Taiho felt the air tear past him as the room decompressed. He threw himself forward, clutching Dory against his chest. His free hand caught the edge of the emergency door. Yuna was there. She grabbed his arm and pulled. Behind her, Bora and the other cubs were screaming. For one terrible moment, Taiho hung suspended between safety and the void. Duri clung to him, his small claws digging into his uniform. The cub's eyes were wide with terror. "Hold on," Yuna shouted. She pulled with all her strength. Taiho kicked against the wall. His fingers slipped. He felt the cold of space reaching for him. Then other hands grabbed him. Bora had seized his other arm. The other cubs, working together, pulled with her. Velhari's strength, even in children, was greater than human. They pulled him through. The emergency door slammed shut behind him. Taiho lay on the floor, gasping for air. Duri was still pressed against his chest, trembling but alive. All 7 cubs were safe. All of them had survived. Bora stood over him, her golden eyes filled with something he had never seen before: respect, gratitude, love. "You saved him," she said. "You almost died." "For Duri. For us." Taiho coughed and managed a weak smile. "Told you I'd keep you safe." The battle outside reached its climax. Reinforcements arrived. More human ships, more Velhari cruisers, drawn by the distress calls. The Dominion found themselves caught between 2 fleets that had learned, in the space of 1 terrible hour, to fight as one. Commander Vex watched his advantage disappear. His ships were being destroyed now, caught in crossfire they had never expected. "Retreat," he ordered. His voice was cold with fury. "All ships, retreat." The Dominion fled. When it was over, the cost was terrible. Dozens of ships destroyed. Hundreds of lives lost. Kepler Station was crippled, barely holding together, but they had survived. Human and Velhari, together. Rennek was pulled from his damaged flagship hours later. His ship had taken 40 direct hits. While shielding the horizon's edge, it would never fly again. He found his way to the medical bay, where the cubs were being treated. Taiho was there, unconscious on a bed. The sergeant had burns across his arms and chest. His right leg was broken. His body had been battered by decompression and impact, but curled up beside him, refusing to be moved, was Duri. The small cub was sleeping. His tiny claws wrapped around Taiho's hand. Rennek stood in the doorway, looking at the scene. This human had nearly died protecting a Velhari cub. Not for reward, not for alliance, simply because the child needed protection. The warchief walked forward. He stood beside Taiho's bed and looked down at the sleeping man. Then, slowly Rennek knelt. "In my tongue," he said quietly, "there are words spoken only to the greatest warriors, to those who have proven their honor beyond doubt." He placed his scarred hand on Taiho's chest. "These words have not been spoken to an outsider in 300 years. He spoke in the Velhari language. Ancient words. Sacred words." When he finished, he stood. "When you wake, human," he said, "know that you have earned something no other has earned. The respect of the Velhari, the brotherhood of warriors." He glanced at Duri, still sleeping peacefully. "And the eternal gratitude of our people." He turned and walked away. Behind him, Yuna stood in the shadows, watching. Tears ran down her face. She looked at Taiho, at Duri, at the 7 cubs who had survived against all odds. They had won. Not just the battle. Something far more important. The galaxy would never be the same. 1 year later, the Velhari homeworld welcomed its first human visitors. The planet was called Vel Prime. It was a world of vast forests and tall mountains, of rivers that ran red with iron and skies painted in shades of gold. For centuries, no outsider had been permitted to set foot on its soil. Until now, Ambassador Sujin stepped off the transport and felt the alien sun on her face. Behind her, a delegation of human diplomats followed, all of them nervous, all of them aware of the history they were making. But Sujin was not thinking about history. She was thinking about 7 children and the people who had refused to abandon them. The ceremony was held in the great Hall of Vel Prime. It was an ancient place, carved from stone that had stood for 1,000 years. Velhari from across the Confederacy had gathered to witness something that had never happened before, an alliance between predator and prey. Elder Theska stood at the center of the hall. She was older now, her movements slower, but her eyes were as sharp as ever. 1 year ago, she said, her voice carrying through the vast space, we sent a war fleet to human space. We expected to find enemies. We expected to find thieves who had stolen our children. She paused. Instead, we found something else. We found people who had saved our children, who had fed them when they were hungry, who had comforted them when they were afraid, who had risked everything for cubs that were not their own. She turned to where the 7 cubs sat, no longer cubs really. They had grown. Bora stood nearly 2 meters tall now. But she was still young, still learning, still carrying the lessons she had learned aboard the horizon's edge. These children are the bridge between our peoples, Theska continued. They carry our blood and human kindness in their hearts. They are proof that trust can exist between those who were once strangers. She gestured, and Yuna stepped forward. Yuna was not wearing a military uniform. She had resigned her commission 6 months ago to become a liaison between human and Velhari worlds. She spent her days helping others understand what she had learned in that dark shelter. Beneath the burning city, that compassion was a choice. That kindness could be given to anyone. That love did not recognize species or boundaries. Lieutenant Yuna, Theska said. 1 year ago, I called you Kareth, guardian of the young. Today, I give you something more. She lifted a pendant, a piece of carved stone on a chain of woven metal. This is the heart of Vel. It has been given to only 12 beings in the history of our people. You are the 13th. You are the first human. Yuna bowed her head as Theska placed the pendant around her neck. When she looked up, there were tears in her eyes. I didn't do anything special, she said. I just did what anyone should do. I helped children who needed help. That is what makes it special, Theska replied. In our history, we have met many species. Most of them feared us. Most of them fought us. But humans are different. She looked out at the crowd. Humans see a child in danger and feel something we did not understand. Something we have learned to call love. Unconditional. Universal. Given without expectation. She turned to face the gathered Velhari. This is the lesson the cubs have taught us. This is the lesson we must carry forward. Strength is not just power. Strength is also gentleness. Strength is the courage to protect those who cannot protect themselves, even when they are different from us. The hall was silent. Then, slowly, the Velhari began to thump their feet against the ground. It was their form of applause, a thunder that shook the walls. Bora walked to where Yuna stood. She was tall now, taller than any human, but when she looked at Yuna, she was still the frightened cub in that underground shelter. You changed everything, Bora said quietly. You and Taiho and Captain Jisoo, you changed who we are. Yuna smiled and reached up to touch Bora's face. No, you were always capable of this. You just needed someone to show you it was possible. Across the hall, Taiho stood against the wall, watching. He had recovered from his injuries mostly. His right leg still ached in cold weather. He still had nightmares about the darkness of space reaching for him. But standing beside him, having refused to leave his side for even a moment during the ceremony, was Duri. The small cub had grown too. He was not so small anymore. But he still looked at Taiho with the same devotion he had shown in that moment of crisis, when the human had thrown himself into danger to save him. You could have died, Duri said. He said this often, as if reminding himself of the truth of it. You could have let go, saved yourself. No, Taiho replied. I couldn't. Why? Taiho was quiet for a moment. Then he said, because some things matter more than survival. Some things are worth dying for. He looked down at Dory. You're one of those things. Dory pressed himself against Taiho's side. He didn't have words. He didn't need them. The ceremony ended with the signing of the first formal alliance between humanity and the Velhari Confederacy. It was a document that would reshape the galaxy. Trade agreements, mutual defense pacts, cultural exchanges, all of it built on the foundation of 7 children and the humans who had loved them. But for those who had been there from the beginning, the paper meant nothing. The alliance had been sealed long before any document was written. It had been sealed in a dark shelter under a burning sky. It had been sealed in the hold of a ship, where a captain chose compassion over protocol. It had been sealed in a battle where enemies became brothers. Years passed. The alliance grew stronger. The cubs grew up. Bora became a diplomat, the first Velhari to serve in human space. She spent her days building bridges between worlds, teaching others what she had learned from a human medic who had refused to give up. One day, she stood before a council of alien species. They were discussing war. Some of them looked at the Velhari with fear. They saw predators. They saw monsters. Bora thought of Yuna, of Taiho, of a burned planet and a hand that refused to let go. My people were taught that strength means domination, she said. We believed that power came from fear, from control, from the ability to destroy. She paused. But humans taught us something different. They taught us that true strength is the courage to be gentle. True power is the choice to protect instead of destroy. True victory is turning an enemy into a friend. She looked at the fearful faces around her. I stand before you today because humans saved me when they had no reason to. They fed me when I was hungry. They held me when I was afraid. They gave me hope when I had none. Her voice grew firm. That is what humans are. That is what humanity means. Not weapons, not technology, not conquest, but hearts that are big enough to love strangers. Souls that are brave enough to be kind. The council was silent. Slowly, the representatives began to speak. Questions. Discussions. The beginning of understanding. Bora smiled. Far away. On a human world, Yuna sat in a garden and watched the sunset. She was older now. Her hair had gone gray. Her hands were not as steady as they once were, but around her neck, she still wore the heart of Vel. And in her arms, she held a picture, a crude drawing made on a datapad, showing a human with wings surrounded by small Velhari shapes. She had kept it all these years. She would keep it forever. The cubs had trusted humans. And in return, the fleet had given them their hearts. Some bonds were stronger than blood. Some families were built not from genetics, but from choice. And some victories were won not with weapons, but with kindness. That was the human way. That was how they conquered the stars. Not with fire, with love.